Thanks for checking out this video. Today I'm going to be narrating the Ledger import process on behalf of Mac and Sophie, who are taking the week off. Today's lesson is the second in a series of lessons that cover various aspects of the Q&A Excel and Sun Systems Ledger import processes. I have deliberately split the Ledger import processes into components, hoping that that would make it easier for you to identify which lesson would most appropriately respond to the experience that you are having with Ledger import. In the first video in the series, I covered how to successfully use a pre-established mapping definition to transfer the raw data from a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet into the Sun Systems application. What I showed you in that video covers most transaction uploads. But what happens when something goes wrong? And that is what today's lesson is going to cover. In our video, I'm going to use a pre-mapped definition to speed up the mapping and the Ledger import. If you want to learn how to map a Ledger import from scratch, be sure to watch the third video in this series. For today, we will assume that the mapping already exists. If you have watched the first video in the series, this spreadsheet is going to look very familiar to you. The data is similar. I am treating this as a recurring journal, and I've made a few changes so that the data will trigger errors during the upload. Now you may be wondering what kind of incorrect data would trigger error messages. Incorrect data or incorrect information for our purposes will be information that is different from what the system is expecting. This is going to happen to you from time to time, and you're going to need to know how to handle that situation. So here I have my data. Now I want to run the import process. I'm not going to go through this step by step because you have already seen that, or you can go back and look at that in the other video. I'm going to run through the process, but I'm not going to explain each step that I take. As you know, if I run this process and I click OK, if the data is successfully transferred into Sun Systems, the Data Send interface is simply going to disappear when I get the successful transfer message. And I get a Data Send error message. In this case, because I tried to upload incorrect data, I received this message. 2 errors were detected in Data Send. Every time I map an upload definition, I assign an error cell. That's this definition right here. Now, because I have errors in my data, I suddenly have a new appreciation for that cell. I'm going to click OK to get rid of the message, and then I'm going to go to the error cell. I can tell where the error cell is because there is a small red triangle in the upper right-hand corner. Now here, this is very convenient because it shows me exactly what kind of problem I have with my data, and it shows me the cell in which that problem data is held. So I'm going to minimize this screen, and I'm going to go to the first of my 2 problem cells. It seems that there are a couple of issues with org IDs. Here I can see that the org ID is A1111. And I know that this is wrong. I know that this org ID is supposed to be for the General Conference, and I know that the org ID for the GC has 5 ones. So I need to fix that analysis code, and I can do that simply by typing in the correct code. I will also go down 4 cells and correct that code as well. And I'm going to save my corrections. So now I have corrected the 2 problems that the system located for me, and I'm going to try the Data Send. I'm going to click OK again, and I am very politely asked, the data will be overwritten. Are you sure you want to continue? And I'm going to say yes. Of course I do. And now 8 records have been transferred into Sun Systems. So I'm going to follow them and go into Sun Systems, into the Ledger import process myself. Now here is my file. April 10, 2014. The system is going to run through the validation process, as we can see by the message in the lower left corner of the screen. Down here. During the validation process, what the system does is it examines every transaction line to ensure that it complies with the business rules that govern this particular business unit. Whenever there are errors in the data, they are going to most likely be discovered during this validation process. Of course, certain kinds of errors, such as the wrong transaction amount, are not going to be picked up during validation, and you'll have to find them in some other way if there are those kinds of errors. Now, as we expected, this particular import contains errors, so it has failed. And here is the error message. Ledger import has failed because there are invalid transactions. And I'm going to click OK just to acknowledge the helpful message. And a second message is going to pop up. This message simply tells me that the validation was run and it came up with some errors in the data. And once again, I'm going to click OK just to acknowledge that I've read this message. This very convenient screen is displayed. This is the report details screen, and quite frankly, this is one of my favorite screens in all of Sun Systems. And I love it just because it takes away some of the suspense. It tells me that I tried to upload 8 records, but 1 record was rejected. Now, because my upload mapping specified post if no errors, because I only want my data to be posted if it's correct, because of that specification, none of the records in this file were posted, just because there were some problems in some transaction lines. I will now click the very inappropriately and inaccurately named Print button. It may well be that this button was named ironically because when you click it, nothing gets printed. What is going to happen is that a very convenient report is going to be compiled so that I can review the data in the upload file. This colorful report is our error report, and it is ugly. I will freely admit that this is really ugly. But it is also one of my favorite Sun Systems reports. I like this report because it tells me almost exactly what is wrong with which part of my data. There is very little that is left to suspense here. Each page in the report is going to show all of the details for 2 journal transactions lines. This whole section is 1 line. It's a little hard to read because the transaction line details are kind of scattered all over the place, but you'll figure out in time how to read it with ease. Basically, for this particular transaction, and here's the line number, for this account code 361MISSI01, if I come to the bottom right here above the solid black line that's going to split one transaction line from the next, I can see exactly what the reason was for the rejection. Now, this particular account code requires a project analysis code, and it was missing. So I need to fix this data as well. So I'm going to go back to my spreadsheet, and I am going to enter an asterisk because I know that I don't necessarily need a project code for that particular account, and I'm going to run my data send once again. I should have got that in the first time. Going back into Sun, and I am going to go back to my control desk and refresh, and I am going to pick the file whose last status is validate only, and I will process that one. Once again, the validation process happens. It's checking the business rules, and this time I have successfully posting my journal. Now the system is very politely going to ask if I want to produce a report. And you may be thinking, well, I do want to produce a report because I want a journal listing. That is not the report that we're talking about here. The system wants to know whether I want to see another error report, and I don't. So I'm going to click No. And here is my journal listing, because the journal listing is automatically produced every time a journal is posted in this particular business unit. I get another information message, and this one says that the batch program has completed successfully. All this is Sun Systems boasting that it has very successfully gone through every step in the ledger import process. Sun Systems doesn't care whether or not my journal has posted, it just is feeling proud of itself for doing what it was told to do. And here I can click OK to acknowledge this message. Down here in the lower left corner, here's my journal number and my journal voucher number as well, and I can confirm that the journal was posted. In this lesson, you learned how to respond to error messages during a ledger import. At this point, the ledger import process should be starting to lose some of its intimidation factors. In the next lesson, we're going to go even further, and we will unmask the mystery of mapping a template from scratch. I hope you'll join me.